Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1588 and today's date is May 30th, 2018 and the title of the episode is Mnuchin's name moves up on the list. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now it looks like the ADP numbers, they came out today and we know that these employment numbers are manipulated. We know the BLS, they've been manipulating for a very long time. They changed the calculation. The same with ADP. And we're going to go through some of the things that the Fed has said and what the corporate media has said and what is really happening in the jobs market, because a lot of it doesn't even make sense. Just like the retail market doesn't make sense. We're going to discuss that also because a lot of people think that the retail industry is not doing well because of online, and we're going to show that online really doesn't have that much to do with what's going on in the brick and mortar area or sector. And we see right now May's ADP employment numbers, they printed lower than expected, around 178,000. And this is the second lowest ADP print since October. And of course what they did was they revised some numbers, and they're telling us that the hot job market has cooled slightly as the labor market continues to tighten. And they're saying that they can't find people to fill these jobs. Now, this is a simple supply and demand situation. Now, if you cannot find people to fill the jobs, you offer more money. If you go back to the late 90s and the tech boom era, moving into the 2000s, they couldn't find people to take the job. So what happened was the salaries continually went up and up and up to find qualified people, for people to go back to school. They saw the salaries. What we're seeing here is that the wages, they're not moving up. And if you can't find people, you have to bring them in some way, somehow. So already this doesn't make sense. And if we look at this entire situation and there's just not enough people to take these jobs, then companies would want to keep their employees. And you would see, since we're in this incredible recovery since 2008, we would see that people would be getting raises. So if the job market is so great, why aren't many people getting pay raises? This is kind of odd. And you really think about it, why aren't wages increasing at the same exact time? So think about this for a second. A high percentage of American workers still aren't getting pay raises 9 years after the end of the Great Recession. The Kansas City Fed researchers found that abnormally high share of employees still in the same jobs haven't received a pay raise in the last 12 months, despite a 3.9% unemployment rate. This is the lowest almost in 2 decades. And economists are scratching their heads going, we don't understand this. Because normally when you see this, wages tend to rise between 3.5 and 4.5 per year. And they're not seeing this whatsoever. So the question is, what's going on? Well, before we answer that, let's go into the retail industry and let's talk about what's happening there. Now, we know the brick and mortar stores, they are hurting. And we know that online sales, they've been picking up and they've been getting stronger and stronger. And of course, on the corporate media, they continually put out the information that everything is being demolished and the brick and mortar sector is imploding because of Amazon. So in the 2 decades since Amazon streamlined the e-commerce process, most retailers followed what Amazon did. They built their online presence and now they can sell online. In many of the stores, you have the ability to purchase online and go to the store the same day and pick it up. Or you can have it delivered for free to the store and wait for it if you need to wait for it. Or you can deliver it right to your home. So they have a little bit of an advantage here compared to Amazon. And the prices aren't that far off. Actually, when I look, sometimes Amazon is a little bit more expensive than at the brick and mortar stores. So we can see that there is an online presence, and about 70% of Americans, about 230 million of them, will make an online purchase in 2018, and it sounds like a lot. And this will contribute about $474 billion to total retail sales. And this is according to Statista's Digital Marketing Outlook. Now, when we really look and we break down the numbers, we see that the retail industry is a $5 trillion industry in 2017. And online sales is about $474 billion. Well, we don't see that one-to-one ratio where everyone's leaving brick and mortar going to online sales. It doesn't even make sense. What this means is that online sales is 10% of all retail sales. That's it, 10%. Now people say, well, in the brick and mortar sector, they include gas, they include motor vehicle sales, they include groceries, and some other categories. So you really didn't count that in with this. So let's count that in with this. And what do we see? Well, if we remove all of that and we just look at the sales of those items that are online, online sales makes up around 20% of the spending. That's it. So the other 80% is still brick and mortar. So what we're seeing right now is that the retail industry is hurting not because of online sales, not because corporate media keeps on telling you that it's Amazon, and Amazon is not the 10%. Remember, online sales is 10%. Amazon is like 1 or 1.5 or 2% of the total sales. So what they're telling you doesn't hold water. What's really happening is that the everyday person is not purchasing like they used to. And that brings us back to wages, jobs, and things like that. What's been happening is they've been manipulating the data, the BLS, ADP, to bring the unemployment numbers down. And this is why we don't see wages moving up, because they keep telling us that there's not enough people to fill these jobs. Well, if there's not enough people to fill these jobs, it's a supply and demand issue, and that would mean that you would have to pay higher wages to get people, to attract them. But when you look at the Federal Reserve Beige Book, you find something else that's very interesting. Because according to the Beige Book, wage increases remain modest in most districts. Again, which is bizarre because of labor shortages. They keep telling us this. Just like they told us that online sales is taking everything away from brick and mortar, which is, again, not true. What companies are doing right now is that they don't want to pay people more money. They're hiring low-level individuals. And if we have to go back to what Obama and the rest were doing, where they were bringing in all these illegals, they were taking up the slack of all these low-paying jobs because they were going to bring in the TPP, where they were going to make every single country even, and they can swap people back and forth and pay them very low amounts. Remember, we're no longer a manufacturing country, and this is going to be a third world nation. They were ready to set it up as a third world nation. So employers right now, they are becoming desperate because they don't have the amount of illegals in this country to pay this low wage. So instead of paying people a higher wage, what are they doing? Well, according to this report, they have been relaxing their rules and accepting and hiring convicted felons in order to alleviate labor shortages. Actually, what they're doing is they're paying them less money to do the jobs. And they're basically bypassing their drug tests. They're not looking into their background now. They don't care. And they're paying them a lot less money to work in the job. Now, think about this for a second. Employers are hiring criminals, drug users, and anyone else they can get their hands on to make sure that they don't have to pay out more money to do a job. This tells you what is happening here. This tells you that these jobs are very low paying jobs They're not going to increase wages. That's why we don't see wages increasing. This is why when they keep telling you that there's a labor shortage, they really don't want qualified people because they're too expensive. That's not where this country is headed. This is not what they want. And remember, the central bankers, the deep state, they're still moving straight ahead with what they really want. And what they really want is a one world government. They want to blend everything. They want a centralized system. That's where they're really going. And the economy's not going to improve. It's impossible for the economy to improve. We lost all our manufacturing. It's taken years and years, and the manufacturing is completely gone. I mean, look, they just went back and they revised the GDP numbers. And we know these are completely fake, phony, and false because they went back all the way back to the Great Depression. They added on, research and development and other things, and they recalculated them all the way up to the present day just to get the 2.0% or the 2.1%, and then they had to manipulate them even further. So the first quarter GDP came in at 2.3, and basically they revised all the numbers, and it came in at 2.2, technically 2.17, and the economy is really not going anywhere. And the problem with GDP, with all of this, 70% is what people spend. Now, brick and mortar is having a problem, and online sales is not really taking up the slack, and people aren't getting the higher wages, how possibly do we have a 2.0, 2.17, 2.2% GDP? It's impossible. It's completely manipulated, and if you go to Shadow Stats, he uses the older calculation, and the GDP number is in the negative territory. And we can see that this is the major problem, and we know that the central banks, they realize that this economy can't go any further. Trump, he knows that this economy, with the Patriots behind him, they know that this can't go any further. A lot of people in his administration he's been getting rid of, and I believe that the next individual who's moving up on the list is going to be Mnuchin. Remember, Mnuchin was given to him. It's not like he sought him out and said, this is the guy I want, just like McMaster's, just like all the other individuals he got rid of. And it looks like Mnuchin is now moving up on the list because he's countering everything that Trump is doing with China, with the ZTE phones, with tariffs, where Mnuchin is saying that the trade wars, they've been put on hold. He's pretty much doing what the deep state, the central bankers want, and he's telling the corporate media what they're telling him. And what is happening right now is Trump and Mnuchin, they are clashing. And eventually what's going to happen is he's going to be relieved of his duties, just like the rest, or he'll resign on his own. And the same thing's going to happen with Nikki Haley and other individuals. And this is going to continue on, because this is a race to crash the economy, to gain the narrative. The economy is dead in the water. And we already see out in Europe, there are problems. And this is going to basically have a domino effect and start affecting other banks. And it's going to end up here in the U.S. And can the central banks, can they control the situation? Of course they can, for a time period. For a time, they'll be able to control all of this. The ECB, while they wasted no time communicating through unofficial channels, they're saying they're not going to step in for now. It's keeping an eye on the Italian bonds, but they haven't really plunged all that much yet, and yields aren't really that high, and there are no signs of stress in lending between Italian banks, and deposits now are stable. Now, we know what they're saying, just like in the year of 2008, when Ben Bernanke came out and said, listen, everything's contained, housing's not going to fall, it's going to continually rise or stabilize. We're not forecasting any type of recession this year, so don't worry. This is what the ECB is doing right now. But you know, behind the scenes, they're going to be propping these banks up. They're going to try to contain it. And I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple of weeks or a month, they come out and say this is completely contained now. That's the word they like to use. And they might even let Italy go to safeguard the remaining Eurozone members. to try to control the situation. So we're going to have to see how they play this all out. And we see that things are rapidly moving forward right now, and the system is breaking down very, very quickly. And we're going to end up in a situation like Venezuela, where they have hyperinflation right now. Their currency is pretty much worthless. And if you look at how high the inflation has gone, which means the value of the currency has devalued so much, it is absolutely ridiculous. And this is how bad it is. They're saying that inflation is around 13,779%. 13,000. So to put this into perspective, a year ago, a cup of coffee cost 2,000 bolivars. Today, it's 200,000 bolivars. I mean, what does that tell you? It tells you that the situation in Venezuela is getting worse and worse and worse. And before you know it, these individuals that are going to the supermarket or anywhere else, and they bring their cash with them, by the time they get there, it's absolutely worthless. We saw this in Weimar, Germany. Argentina and many other countries have had the same exact problem. And this is why you need to have gold and silver. Think about it. Those people that have gold and silver, that's their insurance policy. That's a way to protect your wealth. Those people that have cryptocurrencies, that's another way to protect your wealth. Do I think you should have one or the other? No, I think you should have both. I think you should be diversified to make sure that you protect yourself fully. And you need to have other supplies like food, water, toilet paper, and things like that. Because why? You can barter those things when things really start to go downhill. And we can see that the beginning stages of all this has started. And it's going to accelerate throughout this year, and it's going to get worse and worse. The retail sector here in the United States is going to get worse. The fake numbers that they throw at us are absolutely meaningless. People don't have the full-time paying jobs. They don't have the full-time paying jobs, and they have the low-paying jobs. They're not going to be spending in retail. That's 70% of GDP. We don't have manufacturing like we used to here in this country. This system needs to crash before we can start it over. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.